En mars 2010, M. Borloo, alors ministre de l'écologie et de l'environnement, a signé un arrêté autorisant la prospection et l'exploitation du gaz schisteux, dit gaz de schiste. Cet arrêté attribue des permis exclusifs de recherche de mines d'hydrocarbures liquides ou gazeux, et cela sans aucune concertation auprès des collectivités. Tous les spécialistes soulignent le caractère dangereux de ce type d'exploitation par fracturation. Il suffit de voir les conséquences d'une telle exploitation aux USA et au Canada. Le Canada a déposé une demande d'un moratoire sur tout leur territoire. Les conséquences d'un tel choix sont, d'un point de vue écologique, patrimonial, économique et social, pour ces régions concernées, mais aussi à moyen terme pour tout le pays, désastreuses.
There is a clear opportunity here in Pennsylvania for major new gas production.
I have one quote here from you that says that you're trying to do this in a way that doesn't damage the environment. But you also said recently that water contamination is inevitable.
Well, yeah, I mean...
are those contradictory, or...?
Here, I'll give you the direct, straight answer. There's no such thing as a perfect source of energy. It's absolutely the case that natural gas production is not perfect.
Do you really believe that it's adequate to replace water with cisterns? Could you replace a stream?
Well, replace a stream?
Donc ce diaporama va présenter les gaz de schiste d'un point de vue général. Je vais parler du procédé d'exploitation qui est la fracturation hydraulique, qui est le procédé qui nous pose problème. Je vais parler des risques avérés pour l'environnement. Et ensuite on va rentrer dans le détail avec le permis de Villeneuve-de-Berre, petit permis par sa surface, mais grand par son emprise environnementale. On va détailler donc les différents acteurs, les différentes zones du sud-est de la France, la problématique ardéchoise, quels sont les cantons et les communes qui sont concernés par ces gaz de schiste, et ensuite pourquoi ce permis de Villeneuve-de-Berre risque d'être la première zone exploitée en France. On étudiera rapidement les spécificités géologiques ardéchoises, et ensuite on fera une étude du dossier de GDF Suez que l'on a pu se procurer à Europe Écologie. Alors tout d'abord, qu'est-ce que le gaz de schiste? Le gaz de schiste, c'est du méthane. Ce sont en fait des matières organiques qui sont déposées il y a en Ardèche 180 millions d'années au fond de la mer qui recouvrait notre région. Ces matières organiques, telles que du plancton ou des algues, se sont retrouvées recouvertes rapidement par une couche de sédiments, plusieurs couches de sédiments qui se sont empilées les unes au-dessus des autres. Et cette matière organique privée d'oxygène s'est décomposée, s'est transformée sous l'action de la pression et de la chaleur en hydrocarbures, et ici en l'occurrence du gaz. Donc ce gaz, c'est du méthane, du CH4, et c'est lui qui est utilisé bien sûr pour faire tourner des turbines à gaz qui peuvent fabriquer de l'électricité, du gaz que l'on peut retrouver dans nos cuisinières et qui se retrouvera peut-être dans quelques années dans les réservoirs de nos voitures. Alors, où retrouve-t-on ce gaz? On le retrouve dans des réservoirs qui sont en fait des roches. On a deux types de réservoirs possibles. On a des réservoirs dits conventionnels, donc ce sont, pour faire simple, des grosses poches de gaz où il suffit de perforer, de faire un forage et d'aspirer et de récupérer ce gaz, ou on le retrouve dans des schistes, et là c'est un petit peu plus compliqué, c'est une roche qui n'est pas poreuse, qui est étanche, qui est imperméable, et où en fait on retrouve ce métal dans plein de petites bulles disséminées à travers ce schiste, mais des bulles qui ne sont pas raccordées entre elles. Et pour cette raison, on va utiliser un procédé industriel qui s'appelle la fracturation hydraulique et que l'on va voir dans un instant. Alors qu'est-ce que la fracturation hydraulique? La fracturation hydraulique, c'est assez simple. J'utilise un petit diaporama qui a été fait par Sylvain Lapoix et le site Omnipolitics. Donc on retrouve en surface un derrick qui permet d'installer le système de forage, donc le trépan, tout le système qui va avec ce système de forage. Ce forage qui va se faire à travers les différentes couches géologiques jusqu'à une profondeur comprise entre 1000 mètres et 3500 mètres. Il va traverser ce forage les aquifères, c'est-à-dire les nappes d'eau les nappes phréatiques, l'eau que l'on va pouvoir boire ensuite à notre robinet. Il va traverser les poches de gaz conventionnelles qui ont déjà été épuisées depuis quelques années. Et il va descendre jusqu'à la couche qui nous intéresse, la fameuse couche de schiste qui contient ce méthane. Une fois qu'on est arrivé dans la couche de schiste, le forage va se dévier, il va partir à l'horizontale. Il peut aller à l'horizontale sur plusieurs milliers de mètres. On va ensuite, une fois que tout ceci a été fait, remplir le forage avec un liquide qui s'appelle liquide de fracturation. Il est composé de 95% d'eau, 4% de sable ou de particules céramiques, des petites billes, et 1% de produits chimiques. Et c'est ce pourcent de produits chimiques qui va nous poser problème. Alors une fois que l'on a rempli le forage avec ce liquide de fracturation, on va mettre tout ceci en pression. On va mettre une pression de 600 bars en surface dans ce forage et on va envoyer une onde de choc qui va se propager à travers ce fluide et qui va venir faire une détonation et qui va broyer, qui va fracturer la couche de gaz. Ces fracturations, toutes ces fissures vont permettre de relier les petites couches de gaz les petites bulles de gaz les unes avec les autres et on va pouvoir ramener à la surface une partie de ce liquide de fracturation. Alors c'est simplement, ça c'est un des problèmes, hein. Une partie du liquide, c'est-à-dire 50% approximativement du liquide et le reste, donc on laisse au fond du forage, au fond de cette couche de schiste et on va récupérer ensuite le gaz et les hydrocarbures qu'il y a au fond de ce forage. Ce liquide extrêmement polluant et qui contient beaucoup de produits chimiques va rester pour plus de 50% dans le sous-sol. Il risque ensuite de migrer, il risque de se déplacer dans les fissures et dans les autres couches géologiques et il peut atteindre, il y a une forte probabilité qu'il atteigne les aquifères, c'est-à-dire les réserves d'eau potable que l'on utilise pour alimenter les réseaux d'eau et ce qu'on a au final au robinet. 50% du produit va être récupéré et ramené à la surface. En surface, on va essayer de le traiter. Pour le traiter, c'est pas une simple station d'épuration comme on pourrait en avoir dans nos villes ou nos villages. C'est un process qui est assez compliqué. On a des condenseurs, on a des séparateurs, on a des bassins de décantation. On va essayer de le traiter plus ou moins bien. On va le faire évaporer aussi, ce liquide. Et on va essayer de l'acheminer par camion, soit dans des systèmes de collecte ou alors dans d'autres forages. On va s'en débarrasser en réinjectant dans d'autres forages voisins. Alors, ces produits chimiques, que sont-ils? C'est très difficile de les connaître tous. Il y en a entre 100 et 600. Ils sont protégés par un secret industriel. Chaque entreprise, un peu comme la recette du Coca-Cola, garde ses techniques. Ces produits chimiques, ils servent à plusieurs choses. D'une part, fluidifier les hydrocarbures qui sont au fond du forage pour pouvoir mieux les extraire. Ils permettent de limiter aussi le développement de bactéries dans ce sous-sol. On va forer et amener donc avec du matériel qui n'est pas stérile, des bactéries qui sont à l'extérieur et que l'on va introduire dans ce sous-sol et qui peuvent se développer très rapidement et à terme boucher les fissures qui servent à extraire ces gaz. Ils servent aussi, ces produits chimiques, à protéger le matériel, donc les trépans, les vannes, les tubages qui sont en métal et qui peuvent être attaqués par les acides sulfuriques ou tous les autres produits naturels qu'on va retrouver dans le sous-sol. Et ils vont empêcher aussi le développement de sédimentation avec le CaCO3, le calcaire qu'on va retrouver dans ces couches, qu'on peut retrouver dans ces couches. Donc du coup, il y a environ 600 produits chimiques. C'est un peu le best-of, le florilège de l'industrie chimique actuelle. Ils sont tous toxiques, hyper nocifs. Je vous en ai mis 2 pages, mais il y en a plein d'autres, y compris des sables radioactifs. J'ai découvert ça récemment, qui permettent de modéliser la pénétration, la fracturation dans le sous-sol. C'est utilisé comme traceur de la fracturation hydraulique. Alors les problèmes de santé associés à ces produits chimiques, ils sont nombreux. On a des problèmes au niveau gastrique, au niveau intestinal. On a des troubles respiratoires, des troubles de la peau, des yeux, etc. On retrouve dans ces produits chimiques des cancérigènes, d'autres produits classés comme mutagènes, d'autres comme perturbateurs endocriniens. On s'aperçoit qu'au final, on a une activité qui est extrêmement polluante. On voit sur cette photo satellite un petit cheminement qui correspond à une rivière qui a entaillé, qui a fait des méandres hein, dans le paysage. On voit sur cette photo satellite des petits points blancs de chaque côté et on sait que chacun de ces points blancs est en fait un forage pour l'exploitation des gaz de schiste. Alors on est dans un cas un petit peu extrême aux États-Unis, dans le Colorado, où en fait c'est une zone assez désertique, peu peuplée, qui pourrait ressembler à notre Ardèche méridionale avec les gorges de l'Ardèche ou les gorges du Chassac. Mais on voit que ça prend énormément de surface. On a en gros un forage tous les 200 ou tous les 250 mètres et c'est assez problématique parce qu'il faut bien sûr pas mal de forages, beaucoup de pistes pour pouvoir relier ces forages les uns avec les autres, des pistes qui servent à acheminer du matériel, les foreuses, les tuyaux, les trépans, etc. Et chaque piste fait plusieurs mètres de large. Donc on voit que les paysages sont complètement modifiés une fois que l'on a mis en place cette extraction, cette fracturation hydraulique.
There are numerous deep shale gas basins in the United States which contain trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. Technologies such as the practice of hydraulic fracturing have been characterized as environmentally risky and inadequately regulated. Press reports and websites alleging that 6 states have documented over 1,000 incidents of groundwater contamination resulting from the practice of hydraulic fracturing. Such reports are not accurate.
Hi, my name is Josh Fox. Maybe I'll start at the beginning. One day I got a letter in the mail. It was from a natural gas company. The letter told me that my land was on top of a formation called the Marcellus Shale. I could lease my land to this company and I would receive a signing bonus of $4,750 an acre. Having 19.5 acres, that was nearly $100,000. Right there in my hand. Could it be that easy? The method of gas drilling they use is called hydraulic fracturing, or fracking. It blasts a mix of water and chemicals 8,000 feet into the ground. The fracking itself is like a mini earthquake. The intense pressure breaks apart the rock and frees up the gas. In order to frack, you need some fracking fluid, a mix of over 596 chemicals. From the unpronounceable, to the unknown, to the too well-known. The brew is full of corrosion inhibitors, gelants, drilling additives, biocides, shale control inhibitors, liquid breaker aids, viscosifiers, liquid gel concentrates. On the side of that frac fluid truck, it should say, just add water. Each time they drill a well, they need between 1 and 7 million gallons of water. Each time they go back and frac an existing well, they need an additional 1 to 7 million gallons of water. They can frack a well up to 18 times in its life. The closest they were drilling to me was in a place called Dimock, Pennsylvania. I was going there because I'd heard a lot of complaints. The story of Dimock starts with a frantic series of distress calls from Pat Farnelli.
Sometimes it bubbles and hisses when it comes out. I highly recommend that you do.
You want to drink it?
I won't drink it. When Cabot and them came in to get the water and they were telling me it was okay to drink, I said, well, here, go ahead and drink it. And they wouldn't drink it. There were days when 4 kids were out of school sick. Everybody was sick, including me. We were all, our stomachs were really, really acting up, couldn't handle eating anything for over a month, right? And then Jean, next door, talked to me at church and said, did you notice anything funny about your water? Our well's gone bad. The Mays, they have bad water, and they've got a newborn in the house.
My next trip was just up the road to Ron and Jean Carter's. They had a gas well in their front yard. Shortly after the well was drilled, their water started bubbling and fizzing. It turned out to be natural gas.
We lived here 40 years and the water never had a problem with the water. And they drilled. After they drilled, the water was bad.
My next trip was just up the street. Norma Fiorentino's water well exploded on New Year's Day.
DEP says Cabot Oil and Gas has polluted more than 1,000 water wells drilling for natural
That's my
gas
front yard.
in Susquehanna County.
I've lived next to these people for 30 or 40 years, and we're good friends, all of us, and we just have the same problem.
Cabot sent Quantum Labs out to test it, and the guy looked at it and said, don't drink it, don't shower in it, don't do your laundry, don't do dishes, don't do anything in it.
The other thing that was bothering Debbie May
the copper
Well,
wire.
it was something that was happening with her animals.
Sorry, they don't come outside.
Their hair was falling out.
See how she's gone wrong.
And one of her cats was projectile vomiting.
We have 3 cats that it's happening to.
So his hair's falling out
Yeah. And he's losing weight.
since basically the same period
Yeah.
of time. Hi.
It was clear that something had gone terribly wrong in Dimmock. But there was something else. I kept hearing reports of a family that could supposedly light their water on fire. And then I got a phone call.
Not gonna do anything, nobody cares, because of the holy dollar that's rolling in.
I went across the road to see if I could interview the people who called me. But a man came to the door. He spoke to me hastily, and he was nervous. He handed me a jar. I said, "What's this?" He said, "It's bad stuff." I said, "What do you mean bad stuff?" He said, "That's about as bad stuff as you can get. Take some. Find out what's in it." I was starting to compile a list of things that happened in Dimmock. Water trouble, health problems, hazardous explosive conditions inside the house, destruction of land, lack of confidence in state regulatory commissions, dead or sick animals, the difficulty of obtaining good information about gas drilling, and the idea that there's a cover-up taking place. On my way to drop off the jar at a water testing lab, I said goodbye to my $100,000.
Colette!
And it's gurgling.
Oh, wow. So that's the sample.
This is, it's all settled out,
Right.
but that's what our water looked like.
That came just out of the tap?
Out of the tap.
Right.
So in 3 weeks, they contacted Mike by phone and said, "We've tested your water. There's nothing wrong with your water."
With this?
With this. There's nothing wrong with the water that can be affected by the oil and gas production in your area.
So what have you been doing?
I've got 2 500-gallon tanks, and I go to town once a week and buy water.
Oh, yeah, I saw it go up for a second.
Yeah. We'll just give it a second here.
Whoa, Jesus Christ. Don't drink this water. Jesus Christ. Here we go. Those are all the wells.
Yes.
The red.
Yes.
That's where we live.
That's why it's called the red zone.
Yes.
New information tonight on a story you almost have to see to believe.
That's right. Flames shooting from faucets inside a home in Fort Lupton.
It seemed like such a strange and unusual phenomena. Water so contaminated, it catches on fire.
I'm terrified. There are no other words for it. I am absolutely terrified.
Amy Ellsworth was so scared she had her well water tested and found out the groundwater is contaminated with natural gas.
There's no way you can even try to describe that to people. You can't make them understand how a part of who you are is being destroyed by the actions of others for selfish purposes. Shock is one word for it. Terror is probably more effective.
That's because Amy is living in a home that could explode. And now we've learned she isn't the only one.
It just like popped and caught on fire, and
Renee McClure discovered her water is also flammable after she saw our story last night.
I want to know that we're safe.
Renee worries her family has been drinking the contaminated water for years.
I get headaches all of the time. And, you know, I mean, at least 2 or 3 headaches per week. Actually, the whole family gets headaches. 1 or 2 glasses might not affect a person, but what about long term?
It says here you have trichlorobenzene in the water.
And what is that?
It's one of the volatile organic compounds that comes up with the production of the gas.
Though hazardous materials were being injected underground, EPA did not need to investigate. Weston Wilson, a 20-year veteran of the EPA, wrote a letter to Congress objecting.
You could be picking up from these citizens is what we should be investigating, but we're not. And they certainly don't deserve to be exposed to secret chemicals.
Now, we'll get you out of there. Come on.
The Lockers threatened the gas company with a lawsuit. They settled for $21,000 to put in a reverse osmosis filtration system.
This is the well that was on the property when we bought it. We're still using it, but it's the one that went bad. This is our system. It pumps out of there, it pumps through the softener, it pumps through there, and it fills this 500-gallon tank. It's just a centrifugal pump. It goes through a real fine, I call it a filter, it's more like a membrane. We were actually drinking it for a while. But 4.5 years ago, Rhonda got really sick with extreme neuropathy and is in a lot of pain. She just faded fast and had the bone pain, and she's been through spinal taps and everything to try to find a cause.
Jeff and Rhonda Locker found out that a reverse osmosis unit won't filter out glycol ethers. Glycol ethers eat the membranes inside of the filters.
We don't drink it anymore.
Like Jeff and Rhonda Locker, after a nearby frack job, Lewis Meek's water went bad. Started smelling like gas.
See, 2004, they drilled this well right over here. I don't know if you can see it from here. It's 5.
Numerous water tests turned up various forms of hydrocarbons and glycol ethers. With his back against the wall, Lewis had no alternative but to try to drill a new water well on his property.
From 180, 160, you could smell gas. And he went in there and we got to 240. And when we put that joint on and started to try to blow it out, well, they came at us.
Natural gas exploded out of Lewis Meeks' water well for over 3 days. The Department of Homeland Security reported that over 3 million cubic feet of natural gas escaped into the atmosphere. Lewis had to get an injunction from a judge to get in Canada to cement the well to stop the flow and to provide him with a replacement water source.
So you actually hired a hydrogeologist to figure out what was going on around here?
Yeah.
And what did he say?
He said that they got everything intermingled. When they do anything like frack it, they're going to intermingle everything.
And the water that comes out of Lewis Meeks' original well is only good for some bizarre science experiments and brain-altering recreational activities.
Oh, man. Tell me you drink that.
No way.
Tell me there ain't nothing wrong with this water.
It smelled like turpentine. That chemical smell that goes straight to your head and gets you dizzy almost immediately.
I never seen such lying, you know what I mean. I mean, their word ain't no good. And, you know, and we was all raised that way. You know, if your word ain't no good, you ain't no good. And you talk to these are grown men lying to you.
Right.
For what? For money. And that's it.
Glycol ethers are odorless, colorless, and are a liquid chemical component of plastic.
Something definitely in it.
When Lewis took a blowtorch to his water, I think we found a cheaper way of testing for glycol ethers. Either that, or a secret Wyoming recipe for homemade plastic. John Fenton describes his home being surrounded by venting condensate tanks. At times, the fumes from the condensate tanks are so strong, they surround the house in a cloud of toxic vapor.
And you can come out here when the sun's coming up and the air is just brown. The first 100, 200 feet of air is like a brown blanket laying over the top of everything. And, you know, not only are all the animals in there breathing it and absorbing it through their skin, but all the people are too.
Kathy and her mother-in-law, who lives right down the road, suffers from headaches, dizziness, and a loss of smell and taste.
By God, if your way of life is being besieged and your health is under attack, I don't know what else you can do. I don't know where the hell I'd go, though. Where else can I go? This is happening everywhere. That's the biggest thing I want people to know is you're not alone if this is happening to you, because I'm in the same boat you are. And what we need to do is we need to get together and we need to stand up and we need to speak with a unified voice and we need to stand up to these assholes.
The Derrick Tower that you see is the drill rig. The drill rig moves in for 3 to 4 weeks, drilling a hole that's anywhere between 11 and 8,000 feet down to the shale formation. Each well completion, that is, the initial drilling phase plus the first frac job, requires 1,150 truck trips. What you see here is the flowback pit, of what you call flowback water, frac water, or what the industry likes to call produced water. Before the water can be hauled away and disposed of somewhere, it has to be emptied into a pit, an earthen pit or a clay pit, sometimes a lined pit, but a pit where a lot of it can seep right back down into the ground. I mentioned the problem of water removal, 200 to 300 trucks per well. That's a lot of water to clean. To get around this problem, the industry employs evaporation sprayers. In the flowback pits, the water is sprayed into the air in the sunlight so that it evaporates faster. Now, of course, you're probably saying to yourself, that's insane. That water contains all the fracking chemicals, which are toxic, and all the volatile organics, which are also toxic. They create ozone, hazardous air pollutants, and they fall down in the form of chemical or acid rain on the grasslands. Each well site is equipped with a mini refinery and storage unit. What you see here is what's called a separator. When the gas comes up out of the ground, it comes up wet. The separator heats it up to 212 and boils off the water. Benzene, toluene, xylene, and a host of others are all evaporated right there on the site.
She said it was like being hit in the temples with 2 2x4s, dragged herself into her truck, and managed to get out, became violently ill, was violently ill all night. These people's healths are ruined. They can't function. They can't live in their homes anymore and go outside.
7 medical researchers from the University of Colorado studied the air and the water, finding acute problems from toxic emissions from gas development. So when I got calls from people in Garfield County, there were calls from people who had severe health problems.
This is Karen Truelove. She started getting massive headaches, getting really ill, feeling sick, and she said it got so bad that she didn't even plan her days anymore. She just tried to get through them. Then my friend Rick has benzene in his blood, toluene.
D. Hoffmeister's gas well exploded. The condensate tanks caught fire, and the rig was consumed.
Our son got up to go look outside, and he had to run back in because the deck was so hot, he was burning. And I opened my eyes, and I couldn't keep them open because everything started spinning. And then the next day, I was even worse, and he took me to emergency. We had our son and his wife and 4 kids living upstairs here in the house when this all started. And all 4 of them got asthma. And 2 of my daughter's children got asthma. They were on nebulizers in the winter to breathe.
I kept getting in car after car, hearing symptom after symptom. My first day in Garfield County, I did 16 hours worth of interviews. And then finally, I got a chance to sit down with Theo Colborn. The only reason we know anything about the fracking chemicals is because of the work of Theo Colborn. By chasing down trucks, combing through material safety data sheets, and collecting samples, Theo has identified 596 different chemicals in 900 chemical products.
But the neurological effects are very insidious.
3 years ago, I started getting really dizzy.
At first, you may just have headaches. Then the next thing, you might have ringing in your ears.
I thought I had an inner ear infection. I went to my doctor, and she's kind of, your ears are clean.
Or you may be a little disoriented, or you may feel a little dizzy.
So they sent me down for a CAT scan.
But eventually, you may feel what is called peripheral neuropathy. And when you get to this stage, you have irreversible brain damage.
For the last 4 years, I have these lesions in my brain.
You may begin to get swelling.
I hurt everywhere in my body, my legs, my feet, everywhere.
I couldn't move. I couldn't reach my face to eat.
And never know where the pain is going to be. The pain can be excruciating. They're inhaling these chemicals 24/7 around the clock.
What's that smell? I don't know. I can't smell anything.
That is one of the side effects of hydrogen sulfide exposure. I don't smell the cat box.
There was something coming off the condensate tanks. I'd seen these condensate tanks everywhere, all across the United States, but I never got a chance to look at them through an infrared camera that picked up hydrocarbons.
All right, there it is. Okay. Tank, vents, school.
Right.
Condensate venting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you see that?
This is just what's coming off the top.
Yeah.
What is all that stuff?
I found out what that stuff is when I got a call from the mayor of Dish.
Pipelines are designed to have this release where they're shooting natural gas into the air. Of course, they tell you that this all shoots up goes straight to the moon and there's none of it lingering around. There's a cloud lingering over one of our subdivisions. Most of the people in the community think that they've just taken their last breath.
Calvin Tillman was so frustrated with the TCEQs in action that he commissioned his own air study. The study found, and I quote, amazing and very high levels of known and suspected human carcinogens and neurotoxins. I was on my way home. All I wanted to do was clear my head, think things through, get out of crisis mode. The phone rang again. It was the water testing lab. The mysterious yellowish brownish jar of liquid from Dimick had given up some of its secrets. Barium and strontium are drilling muds. They're lubricants for the drill bit. Iron and chloride and conductivity were extremely high. With pure distilled water, you have a conductivity of 0. This was off the charts. But the scariest and most difficult part of the test to get my head around were two things I'd never heard of: total Kildall nitrogen and MBAS, or methylene blue active substance. Now, detergents don't sound so bad. You wash your laundry with them, but you don't want to drink a detergent. And you certainly don't want to drink a surfactant. Everything that enters one of your cells enters through a surfactant. So if a surfactant gets into a stream near fish, it'll dissolve the fish's gills. How much water could you replace? I don't know if all this is going to be destroyed. One thing I've found deep inside is a love for this whole country. And with major shale plays being discovered in Europe and in North Africa, and with hydraulic fracturing being hailed there as a possible solution to Europe's energy problems, I don't think this story is going away anytime soon. And it's possible the gas land might stretch a little bit further than my backyard into yours.
Le gouvernement du Québec a entrepris le développement des ressources en gaz de la vallée du Saint-Laurent sans le consentement des Québécois.
Hey, wow!
Wow!
Hey!
Wow!
Wow! Wow! Wow!
Un instant.
Un instant.
Un instant.
Un instant!
C'est notre terre, c'est notre eau.
C'est l'air qu'on respire.
C'est à nous de décider.
Il y en a qui disent qu'on est assis sur un trésor qui s'appelle gaz de schiste.
Gaz de chips.
Les mauvaises langues disent que le gaz de schiste serait au gaz naturel ce que les sables bitumineux sont au pétrole.
On a-tu vraiment besoin de ça ici?
Tout de suite, là. Gaz de schiste.
Des cas de contamination, il y en a eu des centaines aux États-Unis.
En Pennsylvanie,
Au Texas.
au Wyoming,
En Ohio.
au Nouveau-Mexique.
Et au Colorado.
On a-tu vraiment besoin de ça?
Si c'est vrai que c'est un trésor, faudrait être sûr qu'il nous empoisonnera pas.
Là, on dirait qu'il y en a qui sont en train de décider à notre place, là.
On parle de 20 000 puits.
À 100 mètres des maisons. Entre Montréal et Québec.
Avec le bruit, la poussière,
Puis entre le fleuve puis la 20.
camionnage, le massacre du paysage.
À grandeur de la vallée du Saint-Laurent.
Pour l'instant, c'est tranquille, mais ce qui s'en vient, c'est gros. Très gros. Imposant et risqué.
Nappes phréatiques contaminées, bassins d'eau usée, déversement des produits toxiques.
Explosion dans les champs. Incendie.
Sans parler de la pollution de l'air, des gaz à effet de serre et du smog.
Pollution de l'air, pollution de la terre, pollution de l'eau. Ça devient quasiment une chanson à répondre. Sauf que dans une chanson à répondre, t'en as des réponses.
On a-tu vraiment besoin de ça?
Il y a beaucoup de questions. Légitimes, mais pas encore beaucoup de réponses.
On n'est pas contre. Tout ce qu'on dit, c'est que c'est à nous de décider.
Il y a trop de précautions à prendre pour qu'on prenne pas le temps de s'assurer que les choses vont se faire proprement. proprement.
Proprement. Proprement.
Et dans notre intérêt.
Et dans notre intérêt?
C'est pas nous autres, ça? Maître chez nous?